You are listening to Ideas and Leaders podcast. I'm Elena Paweta, Executive Communication Coach and TEDx organizer. With each episode, I'll share with you communication tips and ideas from top business leaders to help you excel in your career. Welcome to the next episode of Ideas and Leaders podcast. Today I'm speaking with John Livesay about storytelling, about one of the passions of mine. As listeners know that I love public speaking, communication, storytelling. So I'm so happy to have you, John, on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much for that nice welcome.
So John is known actually as the pitch whisperer. He is a great keynote speaker. His TEDx talk, Be the Lifeguard of Your Own Life, has over 1 million views. So he's really amazing in public speaking, in storytelling, and teaching others how to do that, how to incorporate this into their presentations. And this is what we will talk about today. So John, how did you actually become known as the pitch whisperer? What is your story?
Well, that story started when I was hired by Anthem Insurance to be a keynote sales speaker at their meeting. And I had said, what's going to happen at the event after I finished my talk? And they said, we're going to have an improvisation session where the audience will shout out objections and people on stage will role play being the doctors in Anthem Insurance. And I said, well, what if I stayed and would be on stage during that improvisation? And if somebody gets stuck, I'll whisper in their ear something from my talk to keep the conversation going. And they said, oh my gosh, that's wonderful. We'd love that. And when I was telling one of the reporters at Inc. magazine this story, I said, one of the people said to me, they loved it so much, they wish that I could always be in their ear when they're out in the reality of the world. And she said, oh my gosh, you're like a pitch whisperer. And I said, oh, I guess I am. And so I had that trademarked and everything now. So people know what a horse whisperer is and a dog whisperer, but people are always curious to know what a pitch whisperer is, which is a lot like what a dog and a horse whisperer does. I help people get calm and confident in doing what they want to do. In this case, tell a great story to get people to want to hire them or fund them or buy from them.
No, it would be really great to have you in the ear every now and then. And I think that many of our listeners would love to do that because, public speaking, and especially when we have to improvise, it is so stressful. And people, even if they are professionals, even if they have a lot to say, they just get stuck and they don't know what to say. So what is, when you're working with business professionals, what is your recommendation how to overcome this barrier of stress and of being overwhelmed and being held, in this moment and not able to continue?
Well, one of my friends, Steve Rohr, wrote a wonderful book called Scared Speechless. And in it, he talks about why people are so afraid when they're speaking. And part of it is the way our brain is wired. Our brain is wired for survival. And if you're standing on a stage or a platform and everyone else is in the audience, your brain is saying, wait, what's going on? The herd is out there and you're out here. Back in the days of the wild, you would be picked off if you were alone. And so we have to override that fight or flight response that we're in danger by being separate from the herd. And the second step is you have to get out of your head worrying about whether people like you or not. And instead shift that self-consciousness into being of service and remember why you're there to help other people and not impress them. It's about helping, not impressing.
Yeah. So how to do that? How to do this? Because I know that many people, they before going out to this on the stage, they're like, how do I look? Do I look okay? Is this okay? Is my hair okay? And they all focus on themselves and they are all repeating their words, what they're going to say, how they're going to start. How to actually turn this around and start?
Well, I have two steps on that. The first one is we get butterflies in our stomach, right? We get nervous.
Yeah.
And my goal, as you can see on the screen for those of you who are watching the video, is to get the butterflies in your stomach to fly in formation. In other words, get those butterflies out of your stomach and into the room and make a gesture. Get the nervous energy out of your body and make a gesture into the room. And, you know, when you realize that your body doesn't know the difference between scared and excited, sweaty palms, heart racing, dry mouth, butterflies in the stomach, you just decide that you're excited instead of scared in this moment. And that automatically shifts. Oh, this is my Olympic moment. This is my Super Bowl moment. Full game on, full attention. I'm here fully, and I'm going to focus on being the best. Now, the other part of it is so many people are obsessed with being a perfectionist. Oh my gosh, if I say one word or forget one word, the whole thing's a disaster. And I've come up with a new term that I call a progressionist. And what that means is you let go of perfectionism and you become a progressionist. We literally just celebrate progress. Was this talk better than the one I gave last week or last month? Our brains are wired to celebrate progress. That's why Fitbit works. When you play video games, they celebrate the next level. So the more you focus on your progress and celebrate that, the less you can be obsessed by being perfect.
Yeah, this is a great approach. We need to focus on the progress, not focus on our mistakes, because, you know, no one knows what we were going to say anyway, what we planned anyway. So I know that you're an expert in storytelling, in how to incorporate stories into our presentation. So how can we do this in such a way so that it is natural, especially in our business presentations?
Yes.
And why should we use those stories in the first place?
Well, there's the traditional case studies of other examples of other clients you've helped. And even the word study and case study sounds like homework to me. And so I say, let's turn case studies into case stories, because stories connect with us emotionally. And if they're done well, they're memorable and they pull people in. So I have a 4-step process on how you can learn to become a great storyteller. And the good news is you don't have to be a born athlete or performer. You can tell a story once you understand the structure. So one of the clients I had, Olympus Medical, that had a product that made surgeries go 30% faster. And they would say that fact to doctors and then wonder why more people weren't buying it. It's so logical. Why aren't they buying this? And once I reminded them that people buy emotionally and then back it up with logic, that they needed a story, they said, oh, so I asked some questions. So now this is the case story they tell. Imagine how happy Dr. Higgins was down at Long Beach Memorial 6 months ago, using our equipment when he could go out to the patient's family in the waiting room an hour earlier than expected. And if you've ever waited for someone you love to come out of the operating room, you know every minute feels like an hour. The doctor comes out an hour early and says, good news, the scope shows they don't have cancer. Then turns to the rep and says, you know, this is why I became a doctor, from moments like this. Now that rep tells that story to another doctor, and here's the magic. The other doctor sees himself in the story so much, and they say, that's why I became a doctor. I want your equipment too. So the 4 parts in that case story are exposition. We know the doctor's name, which hospital, how long ago. You have to paint the picture for us to be in the story. The second part of it is the problem. Unless the story has some stakes that are pretty high, we're not going to care about the story. And in this case, it's the patient's family in the waiting room, waiting every minute in misery. And then the solution is the doctor comes out and says they're going to be fine. But what really makes that story great is the resolution. What is life like after? When the doctor goes, this is why I became a doctor. And that's what makes other doctors see themselves in that story. So exposition, problem, solution, and resolution. When you have that structure, make sure that your stories have all 4 parts and you don't leave one out, then your stories are going to start really resonating.
Wow, this is so simple. This is so easy. I really like it. I think that our listeners can think of one of the story situation they want to incorporate in their presentation and just practice. So exactly. Exposition, you're describing the place yes. and the situation, then the problem, solution, and resolution. So
Exactly.
for steps, I really like it. So how to make your story, to make your speech, your presentation even more memorable? So do you think that just telling the story and following the steps is enough, or is there something else that we can do?
There's a checklist I have. It's called the 3 C's. The
Okay.
first is it clear? Your story must be clear. If it's confusing, no one's going to say yes. And they're not going to tell you they're confused. Second C is it concise? Why does it need to be concise? Well, nobody wants to listen to something ramble on and on. And more importantly, you want people to remember your story. And if it's too long, they can't remember it. But if it's concise, they can. And the final C is it compelling? Does it tug at the heartstrings? Do we care about this people in the story? So clear, concise, and compelling. Once you've written the story using that 4-part structure, then practice it with your friends and coworkers and ask them, is it clear? Is it concise? And is it compelling? And you'll get feedback. I was a little confused here. I think you could cut that part out. I didn't really feel anything. Is there some emotion you could add here? And then that's where your story really becomes memorable.
I think that it is great that you mentioned the feedback and that it is important to ask for feedback. I think that many people, especially in the business environment, from what I observe, they are a little bit hesitant. They're a little bit afraid of asking for feedback because feedback is associated with something bad. That I'm doing something wrong, so maybe I will not ask at all, and I will not get any bad feedback, and I'll continue as it is. So, do you think it is really worth proactively reaching out for feedback, even if there is no feedback culture in the company?
Yes. Think of an athlete. They watch the footage of themselves play after a game. As a sales keynote speaker, when I'm filmed at events, I watch my footage. Oh, that really worked. I could take a longer pause here. I need to maybe make that a little more concise. So if you don't have someone that can give you feedback, give it to yourself. Film yourself, record yourself, and listen to it.
It is so hard watching yourself on the video. I see that when people see themselves on the video, they're like, "Oh, turn it off. I don't want to see." Because I don't know, there is something in this that we only look at something that is wrong with us. We are not paying attention and we're not looking at good things. So yeah, I think that this is also the case why we cannot be objectively looking at ourselves.
Well, once you get over the fear of judging yourself so harshly, oh, I don't look like Brad Pitt. Oh, I'm no younger, 25, all the judgment stuff. And you just have to remember, again, why am I speaking? What's the purpose? It's bigger than who I am. For most of us, we're not being hired to be models. We're hired to connect and give some message to people, to inspire and motivate them and give them some ways to improve their life. And so all of that age and looks is transcended when you're speaking to someone's heart.
Yeah, we need to focus on the why. It is so important. So, John, you have so many great tips, and it all seems so easy when you're saying this. I think that when we're facing the real life situation, for example, a sales meeting, and suddenly all our structures are gone and we forget everything. So do you have any tips for our listeners when they're having to sell their products, their services, when they have to maybe pitch their business? Is there any simple solution that you can recommend?
I can tell you that the more practice you have, the more prepared you are, the more confident you are. And so don't try to wing it and don't wait to the last minute. So when I was giving my TEDx talk, Be the Lifeguard of Your Own Life, I rehearsed for every minute I was speaking, I rehearsed an hour. I could say that backwards, forwards. If I had to stop, I have to go in the middle. If I had a disruption, nothing would throw me off. Same thing with Tiger Woods. You know, his dad used to make noises and to try and distract him when he was hitting a ball so that he would be so laser focused, nothing could throw him off his game. I've had talks where the the slide projector stopped working. And I have to know my content so well without slides, or the microphone stops, or the fire alarm goes on, or somebody before me had a bloody nose, or all kinds of stuff happen. That's why you have to have your stuff so well done that whatever else is happening in the room, you can still go back to, I know my content so well that I am still confident. Or if someone asks me a question, I don't get thrown or lost in where I am in the process, that I can get back on track because I know what I'm doing, just like an athlete does.
Yeah, it is so important that we know our material so well that we don't have to use the slides. We don't have to rely on anything out there, the prompter, the slides. This is something that can just help us, but it is not the presentation. Because very often in business, I know that we just have to use the slides, and sometimes we just, okay, I will read something from the slide.
Oh, it's a kiss of death.
That's not how it works.
Yeah, nobody wants to be read to. We're not children in school. So the biggest mistake I see people who aren't professional speakers is having too many words on the slide and then reading every bullet point. You've lost the audience. They'll be bored out of their mind. So the slide should be images or maybe one or two words that trigger a story.
Yes, absolutely. And this is what we can observe on the TED Talks, for example. It is a very good example when the message is there and we can clearly see what speaker wanted to say, but there are no bullet points and no text on the slides. So speaking about the sales presentations and coming back to sales presentations, what would you recommend our listeners to focus on in the sales pitch? Is there any structure that you can suggest apart from using the stories that you already mentioned, which is a powerful tool?
Well, in addition to a case study turning into a case story, you need to have your own personal story of origin so that people connect with you. Otherwise, you're just seen as a commodity, right? There's a bunch of people that are doctors and lawyers and dentists and architects and mortgage brokers. But if you have a personal story of why you became an architect, for example, oh, I was 11 years old. I play with Legos. I loved it. Now I have a son that's 11. I still play with Legos with him. I'm just passionate about how things are put together. That separates you from all the other people who just talk about how many years they've been in business and where they went to school. So a personal story of origin is another way for people to get a sense of who you are and that they want to work with you.
Yeah, so we need to have a personal story. We need to present the case studies in the form of case stories and connect with people emotionally. Great. Okay. Thank you very much, John, for all of those wonderful tips. Everything seems so simple. So what, to summarize our conversation, what would you recommend for those who are maybe not so comfortable in speaking in public, or not professional speakers or trainers? What are the main areas that they should focus on to be better?
I would say the number one thing is don't go it alone. Get some help. I have a Revenue Rockstar Mastery course where people can go through some online training and get some group coaching from me. And I work with people and refine their stories after they've gotten the structure. The big thing is, if you want to become a better storyteller, learn the craft, practice this craft, and then get someone to help you like you would if you were trying to learn how to play an instrument. Because your voice is an instrument, your body, how you move is an instrument. And once you've got all that going on, then you can start helping other people tell stories. And that's when you know you've mastered something, is when you learned it enough that you can start helping other people do it.
Wow, great. So I think that you mentioned that you have your program, and I'm sure that many of our listeners would be interested in checking it out, maybe connecting with you. So if we want to reach out to check your offer, where we can find you.
My website, John Livesay, L-I-V as in Victor, E-S-A-Y.com, has all the information about hiring me as a speaker or getting training from me, or my book, which is a business fable about the power of storytelling. If you take out your phone and text the word pitch, P-I-T-C-H, to 66866, you get the first chapter for free.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you for this offer. So we will put the links to what you just mentioned under the episode so that our listeners can immediately jump there and connect with you and also upload the first chapter of the book. Thank you very much, John. It was a pleasure talking about storytelling. So many wonderful ideas you had. So it was really very valuable conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you for listening to Ideas and Leaders podcast. Did you enjoy this episode? Let me know that you listened by tagging me in your LinkedIn profile and using a hashtag Ideas and Leaders. See you in the next episode.